All right, hello Algebra 2. Today we're going to look at dividing polynomials. You will basically have two situations where you're taking a polynomial, dividing by a monomial, and then taking a polynomial and dividing by a binomial. So to start with, we're going to take a look at dividing a polynomial by a monomial. So in the first one, we have 4x squared y squared plus 8xy squared minus 12x squared y cubed being divided by 4xy. So what you're allowed to do in this case is basically take each term and break it up where you're dividing it by the 4xy. And then you're going to have to simplify it. All right, so after I break this up like so, then I can simplify it. So 4 divided by 4 is going to give me 1. X squared over x is x, and then y squared over y is y. Remember that technically x squared over x to the first, you're in reality subtracting those exponents when you're dividing using the properties of exponents. So that would be x to the 2 minus 1, which would give you x to the first. Okay, or some of you even think of it this way, where you got 2 x's over an x and it cancels. All right. Just to show you the work behind the scenes. And then plus 8 divided by 4 is 2. X over x is just going to drop out, and then you have y squared over y, which is just going to leave you with y. And then a negative 12 divided by 4 gives you a negative 3. X squared over x leaves you with an x, and then y cubed over y, so 3 minus 1 is going to leave you with y squared. So you get a final answer of 1xy plus 2y minus 3xy squared. Okay, now I'm not going to go through 2. I'm just going to talk about the way that it's written, and then we're going to do 3 and talk about the way that it's written. So if they have like a number 2, it written this way where you're dividing by the 5x squared y, in reality, you would be doing the same thing in terms of setup, where you have your polynomial that's getting divided, and in reality, just like number 1, you would be dividing each one of those individual terms by the 5x squared y and then reducing it. Okay, so I'm not finishing that one just for the time's sake. And then I would say number 3 is the one that people freak out about, because they see that 2xy to the 4th to the negative 1. Okay, with negative exponents, if you think back to Algebra 1, basically when you have a negative exponent, you're flipping things. So in reality, for number 3, you're dealing with 8x squared y to the 4th, and then you would flip the 2xy to the 4th, and it's going to end up in the bottom. So it's going to be really the same thing that we were doing in number 1 and number 2, with the exception that it's just written a different way. So when you flip it down to the bottom, that negative 1 disappears, and in reality it's just a different way of you writing a division problem. Every year I try to warn kids about this particular example, and then like come quiz time, they end up not remembering that and leaving it blank. Okay, all you're doing is taking what they raised to the negative 1 and flipping it. That's it. And then we're going to finish this one off by simplifying. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. X squared over x is going to leave you with an x, and then these y's would just cancel out. Here the 2's cancel out, the x's cancel out, and then in this situation we have y over y to the 4th. Well, if you think of it this way, the 1y would cancel out, and then you're going to be left with a 1 up here and 3 y's down in the denominator. And then to round it out, a negative 18 divided by 2 is a negative 9. X to the 5th over x is x to the 4th. And then y cubed over y to the 4th, you would have a y left over in the denominator. And again, if it's easier for you, like just to review algebra 1, if I have y cubed over y to the 4th, that would leave me with 3 minus 4 gives me y to the negative 1, which is the same thing as 1 over y. So a little review at negative exponents there. But either way that you remember it is okay. You're just going to have to get in there and practice. All right. So initially we covered dividing by a monomial. 4 is a repeat. I'm not going to end up doing that. So now we're going to move to our other situation where basically we're taking a polynomial and dividing by a binomial. Okay, so there's different ways they can write this. Again, they can use the division sign. They could literally write what you're dividing by in the denominator, that fraction. They can also use the negative 1, but we don't have an example like that. All right, so when you're doing long division with polynomials, okay, what we're dividing by is going to come out front. The polynomial divided by a monomial is the easier one out of the two situations. Okay, so I'll do a couple of these, and like I said, we're going to spend at least a couple of days working on this. All right, so here's how it works. Okay, you're going to start one term back. Okay, so my first thing that I'm going to write is going to be over the 2x. So what times x gives you x squared? What times x gives you x squared? Well, that's going to be an x. So x times x gives you x squared, and then x times a negative 4 gives you a negative 4x. Okay, so when you were doing long division way back in the day, in reality what happens is you're subtracting the top line from the bottom line. So this is going to be a minus, and then your sign here is going to change to a plus sign, because in reality what you're doing is you're taking, when you're subtracting this, you're actually distributing in that negative sign. So that's why those switch. And then the thing that you should keep in mind is if you do it correctly, when you first start out, you want to match with that first term, okay? And then your signs are going to change. So x squared minus x squared is going to drop out, okay? And then 2x plus 4x is going to give me a 6x, and then I bring down the negative 24. And then you begin the process again when we move to the next spot here. What times x gives you 6x? What times x gives you 6x? So a positive 6 does. So 6 times x is 6x. 6 times negative 4 is a negative 24. And then we have to subtract. Okay, and again, when you subtract, it changes the signs of both things. So 6x minus 6x is 0, negative 24 plus 24 is 0. So that means right here you have no remainder. Okay, which for today is going to be the case, because then we're going to get into a situation where we could be missing terms on a polynomial that we have to fill in for and end up with a remainder. So our answer after we divide is going to be x plus 6. Okay, now I realize that one of them is not enough for you to understand this, so we're going to take a look at another one and go through this process again. So we'll take a look at number 8, and then this will end up being the last one. And again, if my video is not enough for you, then Google dividing polynomials and watch a few more examples online, because since this is no Zoom sessions today, you can't ask me any questions live. All right, so again, I'm going to begin by taking what we're dividing by, and I'm going to put the other polynomial. Like in a day or two, I'd be saying, do we have any missing terms? Meaning, we're missing something, why that polynomial is in standard form. So we're using some of that terminology that we learned already from day 1. All right, when you begin the process, start a spot back. So what times x gives you x cubed? What times x gives you x cubed? Well, the answer to that is x squared. So x squared times x gives you x cubed. X squared times a negative 2 gives you a negative 2x squared. And then you got to subtract. Okay, and again, when you subtract, that changes the signs on everything. Okay, so in essence, if you know you're on the right path, that first term should drop out, and then a negative 4x squared plus 2x squared is going to give me a negative 2x squared, and then I bring down the 6x. Okay, now we move to the next spot. What times x gives you negative 2x squared? What times x gives you negative 2x squared? Well, the answer to that is going to be a negative 2x. And again, you want it to match up to start. So negative 2x times x gives you a negative 2x squared. A negative 2x times a negative 2 gives you a positive 4x. Okay, remember, you have to subtract. So that's going to make this a plus sign, and then this is going to make this a minus sign. Okay, so one little calculation mistake could be enough to throw this entire process off. So negative 2x squared plus 2x squared is going to drop, which we want. Okay, and then 6x minus 4x is going to give me a 2x, and then we bring down the negative 4. And then you begin the process. What times x gives you 2x? What times x gives you 2x? Well, that's going to be a positive 2. So 2 times x is 2x. And again, I know I'm on the right path because it's matching up. 2 times a negative 2 is a negative 4. And then I got to subtract. Okay, so again, that changes the signs. All right. So at the end for day 1, 2x minus 2x is 0. A negative 4 plus a positive 4 is 0. So you should end up with no remainder. Okay, and our answer is going to be what we have at the top of the problem. Is going to be x squared minus 2x plus 2. Okay, usually the division of polynomials is something that kids struggle with. But hopefully with the video, and if you need to Google some more, this will be enough to get you started. There is actually a book assignment for this one. I'll include the page and the problem set that you're supposed to do, and I will also have the answer key in there, and also give you the hard copy of the notes. Okay, I'll